Muted.
I don't know what's going on, but I hear my echo and it's just
Oh,
okay. So we're waiting till like 11:02.
yeah.
All right. Well, Janae and I were discussing this before you all joined. We're going to give it till 11:02. So we've got about a minute and a half to go.
What's going on? Bluetooth's not working. I got these. They're crumbling.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to get started in just about a minute.
Say something.
Something.
This is good to go with her headphones, so we're running a little test there.
Okay, beautiful. Oh, you look very cute, like an air traffic controller.
Those are my spares that I never happen to use.
Oh, those are really cool. I like them.
Feel like she's getting ready to start a DJ career. Like that's
Right?
Looks like Princess Leia.
That too. All right, and with that one, guys, it is 11:02, so we're going to go ahead and get started. Thanks everyone so much for joining the May deep dive. I really appreciate everyone coming out. And the person I appreciate the most is the presenter for this morning, for agreeing to be our May deep dive presenter. And so without further ado, I'm going to cue it up to Charles Kent, who works in our marketing department as our graphics designer. I think everyone's had an opportunity to work with Charles. He's wonderful. He's creative. He's so good at what he does. And I know that this presentation is going to knock our socks off because Janae and I already saw a little bit about it, or a little bit of it. So over to you, Charles. Thank you.
Hey, good morning, everyone. So Holly did reach out and ask me to be the deep dive presenter today. And I said, sure. So I assembled a handful of slides to dig into my background up to currently what I currently do with OmniRide. Oh, does everyone hear me right now? Because Althea just yelled at me. Okay.
I can
Althea.
hear you fine.
Okay. Althea's yelling at us that she can't hear me. I'm not sure if I should go help her or just continue, but anyway. Oh, I think Althea is a casualty of McKinsey's meeting. It's on Zoom. Yeah, Holly was just talking about that. Okay. Shall I wait another couple minutes for everyone from the other meeting to filter in here? So I'll kind of start from the top since everyone kind of filtered in after Holly's introduction. My name is Charles Kent. I am my official title for OmniRide is graphic and web designer. I would say my job here is probably like 85% graphics and 15% web maintenance and updates on the website. Yeah, I'm going to kind of go chronologically across my career, starting from when I was a little baby all the way to what I do now and beyond. So what I have here to share is a video that I created, that a self-promotional thing that I did before Holly asked me to be the deep dive presenter today, and I'll just play it for you guys. But it was a little promotional thing I did for my portfolio website, kind of going through some of the skill sets I've developed over the years Honestly, these are placeholder videos. I wanted to go out and actually get better videos, trying to capture the skills I've accumulated. But yeah, I figured I'd share that since it's a good kind of intro thing. Let me move on to the next slide. Hold on. I just played it again. Move on. There we go. All right, so I grew up as a military brat. I lived in Japan and the Philippines when I was a wee lad. I don't have very many memories from that time. My dad was in the Marine Corps. Honestly, the only memory I have from back then was my power wheels broke and my dad didn't fix it. I was very sad. That's the only memory I have from back then. But as I grew up, I became a Nickelodeon kid. I was really into Ren and Stimpy. I really love their humor, as well as Calvin and Hobbes. I'm showing a Calvin and Hobbes strip here. It perfectly tells a story, but has no words, which is basically what I'm going to be trying to do with this presentation. Another thing I was really into that is super vague was the show called Captain Power and the Soldiers of the Future, which is basically a post-apocalyptic show aimed at kids. So there was digital creatures that would roam the landscape and scan you onto their hard drives to imprison you. And this was a show aimed after kids, and I was super into it. So it kind of shaped my taste for certain things in the future, as well as my sense of humor. I was also a Knicks fan growing up. So that means every year around June or July, I would just be in absolute agony because the Knicks would lose to the Bulls or the Pacers in excruciating fashion. I think one year they made it to the finals and that was it. But yeah, I should have chosen another team growing up to root for, but that's neither here nor there. Let's move on. Just a second here. Growing up, my sense of humor is shown here. My friend and I used to draw a lot. I was a very creative kid. So we created this series of cards called Doolally cards, which were we basically took the format of a baseball card where you have the person on the front and stats on the back. So we would just kind of mix it up and make it Wacky Bus Driver or Rotten Teeth Man or One-Eyed Alien, or have a theme out of this world news. Always drawing. For some reason, I always drew people bald when I was a kid. I have no idea why. I think I hated drawing hair. But it's just a 6 of like 100 I've done when I was a kid. Another thing I did as a kid was when we moved to Fredericksburg, there was a golf course adjacent to our neighborhood. So we would actually go down to the golf course and scour the forest and find golf balls to sell back to the golfers for money towards comic books, candy and whatnot. We learned along the way that baladas were highly sought after by the golfers. So I'm picturing a balada here. You bring a pillow sack, fill them with golf balls, save the baladas, sell them at a premium, and make money that way as kids. Another thing we did growing up, my friend Patrick and I, we had a boom box that could record our voices, and we made our own. We recorded ourselves doing a radio station stick. Originally it's the CNP radio for Charles and Patrick radio, and then it became CNW radio for Crazy and Weird radio. So we have a bunch of radio cassettes with our tween voices just talking about random stuff, and then occasionally the way we could actually cut to songs on our boombox. So it was actually sort of a radio show format, just with our little tween voices interjected in between. So I'm talking about random stuff, Nickelodeon stuff, a lot of alien invasion scenarios for some reason. But anyway, yeah, super creative kid. As I grew a little older, I got into programming a little bit, and I played around with this thing called ZZT, which is a super primitive game creation software, DOS based, I think. And I think back on it, and it could have been one of the routes that I could have gone career wise. I really enjoyed the programming aspect of it, but for some reason I didn't really pursue that. I still, my career has kind of driven me down. I know a little HTML and CSS now, but never pursued C++ or anything like that. But and then the picture on the right is actually me in high school painting a panther at my high school, Massaponax High School. I did win, I think it's most creative or most artistic in high school, which I hang over my friends' heads every chance I get. But that's me painting a panther, a mural, I think, in the gym. And that's it for my growing up years. I eventually went to college, wanted to pursue some creative. I went to VCU from 2001 to 2005. My program I went to was illustration. And I eventually got sort of good at drawing. Here's some of the sketchbook pieces I've done, some during college, I think some after. All sorts of subject matter. I was actually worked at Walmart for a brief period, so I think I'm not sure if you can see my cursor, but I drew a Walmart guy with this card. Scanning in, there's a pug with butterfly wings. I also love drawing scenarios or scenes. I was going for some sort of general at a meeting table with his soldiers sort of thing, but I never seemed to finish anything. At some point, towards the end of school, I was like, I should probably whip some sort of portfolio together. And so I did. I probably basically took 6 to 8 months to just sit down and paint a bunch of stuff. My goal was to break into some sort of publishing. My dream was actually becoming a comic cover book artist, or a book artist. So I whipped up a portfolio and pushed my work around. I actually had some awesome teachers in college. One of them was George Pratt. He did a lot of stuff for Marvel and DC. It taught me a lot. And I did get a portfolio out there, but never really got traction. And at some point, I decided that I would pivot towards something that I really wanted, was money. A lot of my friends were kind of going down the starving artist route. I did not find that appealing at all. So I figured I should probably develop a skill set that was more marketable, career-wise. So at some point, I think it was year 2008, my first design gig was with a company called Vision Tech. They were based in Richmond, Virginia. The story behind this company. So there was a fad around that time. I'm not sure if any of you remember it, but there was these art in motion, how to describe these things. So there was a piece of glass and there was rolling mylar behind it to create the illusion of a scene. There were big bulky things that you like hang in your living room. And they were usually of tropical fish and stuff. So I think I was hired on to replace the designer they already had on that they wanted to get rid of. That's basically how my design career got started. But my job there was to kind of take that concept and see what other creative avenues I could go beyond tropical fish. So these are some of the examples I came up with. We actually came up with an inspirations collection, and this is mostly just me scouring the web, finding pretty images to Photoshop and place on these things, be mass produced in an overseas factory. These are some of my favorites. I came up with a footprints one I thought was kind of fun. But obviously the star of the group was Bobby Bass and his buddies, which was a play on what was popular at the time, which is Billy Bass, which was like the fish plaque that would turn its head and sing songs at you. So we kind of played off the popularity of that. I don't think these actually got ever created or produced at the factories, but at least it was at least conceptualized and the piece was finished. I don't think it ever moved to production. On the right here is just a fun ad I did for the Art Motion Carousel, which is basically the same concept, just on something you would place on your desk. And then below that, I actually got to work. One of the cool things at this job is my boss actually purchased a license with Marvel. So he actually had the rights to a bunch of Marvel properties at the time. So I got to play with Spider-Man, Iron Man, the Hulk, and basically try to implement them onto these products as well. So it's basically trying to expand a very limited concept as much as I could with my creativity. And some were successful, some not so much, some didn't even reach production, but had a lot of fun there. Vision Tech became Smarter Tools. This is essentially the same company working for the same boss, they just rebranded. And I think it was right around here where I started kind of getting my design chops, because it was all tool related stuff. So I really had to shift towards a more clean aesthetic, quote unquote, clean aesthetic. So, and I sort of had to expand my skill sets towards illustrating and Illustrator. So I actually drew these hand-drawn generators and placed them on here, illustrated all these things to for quick start guides and packaging, and some of it actually made it to stores like Home Depot and Lowe's. The funniest story I can remember from this time period was there's a process where we would send instructions to overseas factories to follow and so they could send us samples back. And one of our big items that we sold at Smart Tools were generators. So we sent them a bunch of instructions to send us a generator back, and for some reason it came back all covered in wood grain. They thought that it was just great to cover a generator. It's not pictured here, but they thought it was just great to cover a generator in wood grain texture. And they asked us what we thought of it, and we absolutely said, this is not acceptable. Please follow our simple red, black, and white, silver, whatever colored lines. So there's a lot of interesting back and forth creatively with the overseas factories at Smart Tools. But I eventually moved on. A little pivot here. I would be remiss to not mention Papa John's, because it was such a major part of my life. I think I worked for Papa John's off and on as a delivery driver for 12 years. And I have a lot of interesting stories to talk about Papa John's. I did get a $100 tip around Christmas time. I did get a nice love tap from somebody on the road. And I was held up at gunpoint at one point in the store. What you see here is a letter from the Commonwealth of Virginia, where they informed me that they captured the people who robbed our store, and they are obviously not doing so well according to this letter. But yeah, Papa John's, have a lot of fun stories about it. If you want to stop by, I could tell you a whole bunch of stuff about the adventures I've had there, all the weirdos and people showing up in their underwear at the door. So if you're looking for a funny story, just stop on by. After Smarter Tools and a brief stint again with Papa John's, I moved on to Baltimore, where I worked Baltimore County. And the company I worked for was called Levin Group Incorporated, which was a dental consulting firm. And this is where I was I think this is around the time where I really started to become a designer in my own eyes, because there was such a wide variety of things I did for this company. Everything from illustration. For one of the clients, I designed a elephant logo for their practice, their pediatric dentistry practice. A lot of flyers where I would go absolutely bonkers with Photoshop according to their whims and fancies. I designed logos that were eventually produced and built into sculptures and interior art in their offices, as well as standard stuff like brochures, forms, encompassed all sorts of practices, orthodontics, pediatrics, yes, endodontists. And if you think about it, probably the orthodontists probably have more fun projects to do. The endodontists were Not so much fun because they were basically surgery, so everything, was more on the stale side creating for them, but it was such a wide variety of stuff, and I got to learn so many different types of design approaches and styles, and I think this is where I became or began to develop a skill set that was more or less a jack of all trades of designer, which I thought was a lot of fun, and I thought was super useful in terms of my career growth. But after Living Group, I think it was a Living Group for a little over 3 years. And then from there, sadly, they had a layoff thing, which, and then a month later, they asked me to come back. But by then I had worked with a placement agency called Aquint, or was it Boss Group? I forget which one. But they had set me up with a large and probably one of the largest ad agencies in America called TB&C. They're based right in the heart of Baltimore. I was hired on there as a production designer, which I didn't really do anything super creative with them, but I had basically cleaning up everyone else's work, and every once in a while I get to kind of interject myself in terms of creating something from the ground up. Did some stuff for Baltimore, visit Baltimore, Spine Jewelers, Hair Cattery, bunch of big name clients, basically resume fodder. And I was there for a little under a year, and I would describe my experience there as like war. There was long periods of nothing to do, punctuated by absolute terror. Projects would just come in all at once, and you'd have to finish everything yesterday, and clients would be ringing in your ear saying, where is this or that, the other thing, and then you'd say, well, I have an email sent out, I thought I sent it to you, and we basically, just absolute craziness. Probably wouldn't have lasted there very long, much longer than that, but not long after my TB&T experience, I actually got hired on by financial firm called T. Rowe Price, and I actually had a lot of fun there. And I'm sort of sad that it didn't last long. I should say these two companies were essentially contracts. I was contracted under TB&C for, I think it was open-ended, and then T. Rowe Price was a 2-year arrangement that eventually became 2.5 years, because I guess they liked me and they pushed me to stay as long as they could. But situations change with these companies, they have decisions to make. With T. Rowe Price, it was a lot of fun because it was essentially the same thing as Levin Group, only the financial sector. Plus I was hired on, my official title for T. Rowe Price was called quality control designer, which is the way of saying senior designer without having given me the luxury of that title. But essentially, I was a team of 4 overseeing a team of 20 designers. And what we would do is we would review their work to make sure it was good to go for the consultants. So we're basically the last line of defense to make sure quality was up to par. I think my proudest achievement there was that my boss pulled me in and said, you're doing 120% of the work and you have a 99.2% I don't know what to call it, approval rate or acceptance rate. We worked with a task management system called Access, where all the tasks will come in, where all the project components would be housed. So I review the PDFs, make sure everything was good to go compared with the markups. And it was just, it was a lot of fun. I'm sort of sad that it didn't last, but if it did last, then I wouldn't be here. So I left there after 2.5 years. There was a brief period of me pushing my resume out, and I eventually came to OmniRide. I remember the interview I had with Althea, and I tell you, I could have sworn it did not go well. I did not get much sleep the night before. So I just remember myself slurring through everything I was trying to say. I did bring a portfolio in and shared it with Katie and Althea. I forget who else was there. Maybe it was Christine. But I just remember not doing well. And I remember going home and thinking, well, I blew that. So I guess I got to get back to the drawing board. And then a day later, Tracy calls me up and says, we'd love to hire you on. So obviously Althea has an eye for talent, even though when they're not trying, they're doing so well in terms of a face-to-face interview. So what do I do in OmniRide? I do everything in OmniRide. It's kind of expanded. My role's kind of sort of expanded in interesting ways when I got here. One of the first things I remember when getting here, I was meeting with like Parent and Bomb and said, we just want to create a dashboard of things. I think the very first dashboard was the safety dashboard, which I worked with Byron on. Then it became the ridership dashboard. Then the fuel gauge dashboard, essentially a lot of data wrangling, trying to creatively express that data in engaging ways, which is essentially a skill set I got from T. Rowe Price, because that was a super data heavy company where we had to interpret data in quote unquote interesting ways, or as interesting as you could push it. So I was trying to add a visual touch to the data they were trying to represent. These are some of the more, I don't know how to describe these projects, more quote unquote flat projects. I've done the evacuation map. I did a whole suite of those. You can see them all over the transit center. And I think it exercised my creative approach, because essentially it was the same map over and over again. The only thing changing was the evacuation route for each room. So I had to assemble a project file that would have these various elements changing among them in the most efficient way, so I could first of all keep my own sanity, and second of all send them off to Byron and whoever else so they could understand and interpret everything. So I think it's a different type of part of my brain, design part of my brain, that's satisfied by more numbers and shapes, and the web, and maintaining a website, I think exercises that part of my brain as well. It's less creative design and more data interpretation and applying figures and stuff and numbers and text into items that are just coherent, less creative, more coherent. I've had the opportunity to push programs like OmniRide Connect in a lot of different ways. A lot of text heavy things with maps and trying to express what we're trying to convey to the end user, the customer, who's always right and who's at the end of the chain. So I also do a bunch of other fun stuff too. Done a lot of pins, which I was not expecting when I got here. Some interior design, which I never had touched before coming to OmniRide. Green Team was an animal that Alyssa and Yvonne and I came up with, and it's expanded into all sorts of different projects. So I think it's where I find the most satisfaction, where I can kind of create a brand from scratch and it just evolves into its own animal. So the Green Team is just all over the place now, which I'm sort of proud of. Some sad farewell posters. I've done a number of those as well, but I get to express myself creatively with those. And a bunch of campaigns where we kind of take a concept and run with it. I think Althea and I came up with the concept of we just want to show a pair of seats on the bus and just welcome customers onto the bus. So that it kind of evolved to its own campaign. Just a second. More things I've done. A lot of bus wraps. Youth outreach stuff, the Ricky's big birthday bus adventure stuff. There's a whole suite of stuff that runs with that, as well as a more middle school oriented version of youth materials. A lot of events, and all these, I'm showing just one component of these things. Most of these have 6 or 8 or 10 different components that go with it. both print and digital and everything in between. And then one of the other things I was excited about that I got off the ground, I mean, it was actually doing some video stuff. Let me see if this plays. So this is a video I did for, I probably won't play the whole thing, but during the height of the pandemic, we wanted to express how we were taking care of the buses for our customers. So I actually got to be a sort of a director with this. I'll shoot ahead a little bit. So there's actually a script behind this, a lot of visual stuff, marrying it with other things we had going on at the same time. And yeah, so that's one of the other exciting expansions of my role here is actually going into video. Sliders. We actually every once in a while we'll actually have an opening video for the website. If you guys have noticed, sometimes we will hit, I think during the Sunday service campaign, we had a video open up on the website. We've also created an overview. I'll call it the OmniRide overview video that we have housed on the PRTC page. So that's another exciting element of my expanding role here. And oops, hold on. Why are you playing again? What do I like about OmniRide? Public entity over private entity. Yeah, so my career up to this point was with private entities, and coming to OmniRide was sort of a little bit of a culture shock in terms of, I don't know, it's hard to describe, but everything's public. You know, I didn't have to fight with T. Rowe Price to share their things on my portfolio or anything. Most of the things we do here are public, so it's more, it's sort of a different culture in terms of how we express ourselves to the public. There's no competing entities, although I guess so, you know, wide variety of tasks and projects. Like I said, my roles kind of sort of expanded. I've never a dull day here. I don't think there's been a day here where I've left and said, oh, that day just sucked. There's been super busy days, but I've left here with my sanity pretty much every day, and I like the people I work with. I put the like in quotes just to be funny, but Althea is a wonderful boss. I think we have a great synergy. Alyssa and Ivana are great as well. Although they might say different things about me, but that's neither here nor there. I think the best way to describe this work in here is busy without being stressful was just probably the best situation you could be in for me. When things get slow, I get nervous. So I think I can, there's really hasn't been any slow periods that I can think of in the past. There's always been something going on, but I've never left here stressed or you know, taking the work home with me in my mind or anything like that. It's, you know, it's been a great consistent busy ride here, and with the wide variety of projects, you can't ask for anything more as a designer. Ever expanding role, getting into video, the things I'd love to pursue, maybe even getting to the UX side of things, but that's maybe something for the future. At some point, Althea and I are going to do web design, which I'm looking forward to because I love big projects that involve a lot of energy and input and working with collaborating with our web contractor. Perks and more. When I was working at TV&C and T. Rowe Price, I was on a contract, so I literally got no days off. If I wanted a day off, I was just not paid for it. So I actually get PTO here, along with sick time, along with wellness days. It's just a bonanza of stuff that I would have never dreamed of when I was at T. Rowe Price. So I was working at T. Rowe Price pretty much every day because I didn't want to miss a day of pay. But here, if I needed to take a day off to say, take my mother to the airport or to do this or that and the other thing, I actually can, which is just amazing. It's an amazing concept to me. What don't I like about OmniRide? Absolutely. Reaching the end of the presentation here, there's just some things I find funny. Pretty much encapsulates my sense of humor. I find random stuff in my Facebook feed and I share it with my friends and they share it back with me. I love cat memes and dog memes and just random memes of football players chasing a guy with a football. I still paint and draw, not as much as I used to or would like to. These are just some recent pieces I've done in the last year or two. So I think painting and drawing will always be with me. I would never pursue it as a career, because that would just be for a guy who likes consistency and stability. This would not be the life for me. But painting and drawing will always be a part of me. Funny story about the one on the upper left. I was originally started painting a house on a landscape, and my mother came and said, "Oh, that looks so pretty." And then I painted in a UFO dropping down a gargantuan alien. And she came back and said, "Why did you have to do this to me?" And I said, "Because I am who I am." And that's all that I can do. Designer anecdote. So when I was living in Baltimore, there was a maintenance guy who I became friends with, and he had a son. And he found out I was a designer. I was like, "Oh, that's so cool, man. Would you design me a clothing line logo, which you see on the right?" And I said, "Sure." And he said, "We want to call it hard work, but work spelled with an E." And I said, "Sure, okay, whatever." So I came up with this design, which I'm not too thrilled with. I think it's sort of interesting, but it's like, I was doing this in my spare time, so I wasn't really putting a bunch of effort into it. But then he comes back at me a few weeks later and he actually printed my logo out, and he added a Z for some reason to work. But he printed an entire clothing line out, and he said, "Look, we're trying to push this out to suppliers and stuff." I'm like, "Oh, that's super interesting." There was no payment arrangement for me designing the logo. I just did it out of the kindness of my heart. And I was thinking, man, if this got off the ground like Nike or something, would I have to come after them by high-powered lawyers to get some money out of this? But it was just a funny thing that happened. I'm sure it probably didn't go anywhere, but it's a funny design-related story. You have the best stories, I think, or maybe not. What lies in the future? Maybe further education. Although I'm second guessing that now because I actually reached out to a university in Maryland called Micah, and they would not leave me alone. I just expressed the tiniest bit of interest, and they just called me like 20 times. But if I were to pursue education, further education, I might go down the UX design route, because I think that would be a potentially useful expansion of my role to OmniRide. It's also kind of goes down the analytical design route, which kind of balances out my creative design side. I'd like to get something published in terms of my artwork. I would definitely not pursue it as a career, but if I just got one book cover published somewhere, I would be happy, just so I could check it off my list and forget about it. Working out, I used to work out a lot, then I got off it, then I got on it again. I actually had an awesome trainer in Baltimore, and he pushed me in a lot of different ways. He actually got me in some decent shape when I was in Baltimore, and then something happened. But what's going on right now for me is unacceptable. So I've got to get back on that train. And the only reason, and I'm in a really good position to do that now, because I just moved to Woodbridge and I literally can walk 30 seconds to a legit gym. So I have no excuse to not put that habit back into my life. I used to go to a lot of museums and shows. I like to get back to doing that again. Falling off of that. There's actually a great museum in Pennsylvania called the Brandywine Museum. They have a bunch of original Andrew Wyeth works, which, if you know who Andrew Wyeth is, he was a huge artist in like the, I guess, in the 70s and 80s, and his paintings sell for like hundreds of thousands of dollars. And he's one of the artists that my art teacher in high school introduced me to. That kind of in certain ways shaped my art style. I'm big into ghost videos and paranormal videos on YouTube. I always thought it'd be fun to like go somewhere supposedly haunted and see what I could find. Although I'm scared that something would follow me home. So this is sort of like where we're on the bucket list. Travel more. I think I got my passport renewed a few years ago, and I've been meaning to go to like at least, Toronto or something, but I just haven't found the time or the energy to do that. Some point I'd like to start a YouTube channel. I don't know what about exactly yet, but it'd be another creative outlet that I could potentially pursue. Perhaps maybe just taking videos of me drawing and painting and showing my process or something, just so I could kind of knock out two birds with one stone. But we'll see about that. We'll see if I have the time or the energy for that. Pictures of my family. My mother's on the left. My sister is on the right with her husband. She got married a few years ago. She lives in Utah. My mother lives in Fredericksburg. They're important, but not as important as my favorite Calvin and Hobbes strip. And that is it for me, guys. I'm not sure if we want to open it up to a Q&A or anything, but
I will open it up to Q&A. And now I love you even more, Charles, because I am insanely gaga for Calvin and Hobbes. I always have been. So now we're bonded on something else. But if anybody has any questions, feel free to use the chat or just unmute yourself and ask.
So Charles, this is Joe. That was great, man. That was a really good job. So what is your favorite thing to draw? I saw a lot of pugs. I saw a lot of aliens. But so if you can just sit and draw something, what is your preference?
my preference, to sum it up in one word, something surreal. A lot of the artists I like are from the surreal family. There's actually a surreal artist from Poland that I am super into called, I'm going to butcher his name here, but he's called Zdzisław Beskiński. There's a bunch of Z's and K's and all sorts of letters in his name. And he's lesser known here, but he was huge in Poland and countries around there. And he was honestly, he's so surreal, he blows Dali away, in my opinion. So if I were to sit down and draw or paint something, it would be something like painting a house and then painting an alien being ushered down from a UFO, or something that kind of marries the mundane with something strange. I'm not sure what that says about me. But it's sort of what I kind of grew up with, all the comic books I've read, all the shows I've watched. There's I guess there's a part of me that kind of want to, marry the mundane aspects of life with something crazy. I guess that's probably why I'm into ghost and alien stuff on YouTube. So yeah, for lack of better, it's the word surreal, something a little strange.
Thanks. That's cool, man.
I've got one. Just looking at those kind of instruction manuals, like with the generator or power washer, whatever that was, what is your opinion on IKEA how-to guides?
IKEA, I've always had an admiration for instructional things that didn't incorporate words. Because if you're not incorporating words and you're conveying something to somebody and they're getting it, then you're doing your job. So I guess IKEA more or less has accomplished that. I've assembled a few IKEA things in the past, follow the instruction guides with no issue. So I can only speak on behalf of me, but I guess IKEA is doing a good job. It kind of marries into Calvin and Hobbes too, because Calvin and Hobbes has a lot of strips that were wordless. And no words, they're just images. And they instantly got what was going on. So I think that's the mark of a true or a great skill set to have, where you can actually convey something visually without having to use words to get it fully across. So yeah, I guess IKEA is doing a good job. Although I'm planning to buy something from IKEA in the not too distant future, I will update you on my opinion on that if they've fallen off the wagon.
I'm
I don't
curious,
have a
what do you
question. I
consider,
got a statement. Go ahead.
what do you consider to be your most challenging OmniRide project?
My most challenging OmniRide project. Let me think on that a little bit. there's been a lot of projects we've had with a lot of moving parts, but that doesn't necessarily mean that they were the most challenging. I might say when the pandemic hit, that pivot we had to change to create all those COVID related items, just because it was so out of the blue. And I really had to change gears in terms of, because we were doing things like for OmniRide access, and then boom, you've got to create a whole suite of stuff for COVID, all sorts of signs and communications, and just that pivot was a challenging aspect, and it evolved into videos and other items that we were trying to convey. So I would say probably that pivot from what we were doing at Noble Pond, and then that culture shock of COVID lockdown and creating all the items for that definitely took some gumption on my part. So I guess I would say that, but there really isn't a project that really stands out. I would say that videos, any video I've done, I think I've done maybe 6 or 7. It takes different skill sets that kind of all married into one project, which is probably my most favorite projects to work on, just because it involves so many different facets, but it also involves kind of stepping back and kind of being able to critique your own work in a way where it's like, am I accurately trying to convey what I'm trying to accomplish, that sort of thing. So I'm not sure if I answered your question, but
All right, I saw someone in the chat that wants to ask a question, and then we'll move on to the icebreaker. Cynthia.
Yes, I wanted to ask Charles, how does it feel like once you create something, even something such as a bus wrap, you come up with this idea and you draw it and create it, and then you actually see it like on the bus, you see your work, out somewhere. How does that feel?
that's always the best part. It's one thing to sit down at a computer and design everything, and you see it on a screen, and you see the templates and the markups and the diagrams and all that stuff. But then you ship it off to Met, and he actually creates it, and you actually physically see it out in the world. Then that's the design part of you where it said, "Oh, I accomplished something." That's when you actually realize that what I was working on is actually going to be a part of the world out in the open. And obviously the bus wraps are probably one of the most visible items we've worked on here. And we've worked on a number of those. We did the Hispanic bus wrap, which was super colorful and super graphic oriented. We did a series of them for the Sunday service campaign. We've done wraps for Access and Connect, although those were less colorful, more, straightforward wraps, but seeing them out in the open, and every once in a while you'll have a friend or something that says, "Hey, did you work on this or that?" And I said, "Well, as a matter of fact, I did." So I think that was probably my early stages of my career, when I was trying to pursue some sort of book cover illustration career, which I'm glad I actually didn't pursue that. But that was probably the part of me that said, I want to have my work out in the world for people to see. Physically produced, obviously, creating comic books or something, you'd probably be reaching the entire United States. We're more focused on DC and Virginia here, but it's still very satisfying to see my work out there. And it reminds me of, there's a process to everything. There's sitting down on the computer and creating design, and there's actually utilizing that design in real world applications. So very satisfying. It's probably the most satisfying aspect of the process.
Excellent work. Thank you for all that you do.
Oh, thank you.
All right, I lied. I have one more question because Barbara typed it in. She wants to know, what type of book cover genre are you interested in creating? Romance, thriller, etc.
Probably science fiction. I read a lot of growing up, and I read a lot of Stephen King,
Mhm.
and he not only did horror, he would always also marry horror with science fiction things. I also read a lot of I don't think back when we've read. One of my favorite books was One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, but that's not really that. That's more like an intimate story in an asylum. But yeah, science fiction would probably be where I'd go because you get to be a little bit more creative with the imagery. I would love to do something for like the Dark Tower series for Stephen King. That's probably my favorite book series. I read that all 7 books of that maybe 3 or 4 times. And the reason I like it is because it's not only horror, it's also super science fiction and super Western. So there's a bunch of different elements going on there. And so obviously if you have a bunch of different genres kind of mixed into one, you can get super creative with the imagery. So probably some sort of science fiction / fantasy / whatever else. Yeah, like I said earlier, I'm really into surreal artists, so if there's an aspect of that to it as well, that would be great.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think we're going to go ahead. We'll do the icebreaker. And if it takes a little longer and folks need to drop off, understood. But I think we can zip right through it. And Janae, do you want to cue it up?
Okay, so the icebreaker question is, what is your most irrational fear? Let me double back and make sure. I did have that correct, right? What is your most
You
irrational?
do. And I'm going to go ahead and answer it to give you a second, and then we can just go on through. A lot of people already know mine because it really is it's a big deal in my life. I am absolutely petrified of snakes. I'm so petrified of snakes that, yeah, it probably keeps me from doing things. Not 100%, but there are hikes that I won't do because I'm afraid that there are going to be snakes there. So there, that's mine.
All right, Charles, you're our presenter, so you go next.
I was thinking on this, I'm gonna try to clean it up for work. So
Work safe
So-
fear, work safe fear. Let's go with that.
so there was a period of my life where and it still happens, where I'm out in public and I need to use the bathroom, and I have this irrational fear that someone will come up behind me and steal my wallet while I'm doing the act. So, and that's been with me all my life. I don't know how I got there, but like I have trouble attending that on public sometimes just because I have that weird irrational fear. I think I might have seen it happen at a show or something, and it stuck with me. But yeah, that's my super irrational fear.
All right, I will go next. And some of you know this because I've said it. I have an irrational phobia of live chickens. I've been chased by them. It is unpleasant. They are vicious little animals. But yeah, my irrational phobia is live chickens. So moving on, next on the list is Joe.
Beat this one, everyone.
Uh-oh.
Citrus fruit. I absolutely hate, almost to the point of fear, specifically oranges. I have no problem with marmalade. I have no problem with orange juice, but specifically an orange, I find to be one of the most abhorrent things on this great earth. So citrus fruit, there you go.
Something beat live chickens. All right, Becky, you're up next.
I don't know, Joe, I'm still going, what? Are you?
No, that's fine. I've been getting it weird my entire life. I used to be chased. People used to chase me with them when I was a child. So there you are.
So that basket of fruit that I was gonna have.
No.
Okay, I'm with Holly. I'm snakes. Can't do snakes. I don't care if they're pink polka dotted. Didn't even like I wouldn't even let my son have rubber snakes as a kid. No snakes. No.
Okay, thank you, Becky. Next up, Tracy Dean.
Feet, please keep them in your shoes. I don't want to see them.
Okay, Ben, you're up next.
I guess stupid. I have a stupid fear. I'm very aware, but if I haven't been to the restaurant, I really don't like going if I don't know the menu. Like I'll suffer in hunger versus like go to a KFC because I've never done it. So pretty cool.
All right, Phil, you're up next.
I don't know that I have one, but I'm gonna hop on the feet train with Tracy. I
Feet?
completely agree with that. Keep it in the shoes. I got no need to see your toenails. You know, I made images of what I used to call, we used to call it hippie toe for the people who used to wear Birkenstocks and their toes would always be filthy. So you call it hippie toe. So yeah, I'm gonna go with feet. I think I think that's irrational and something I would rather, you know, not have.
That's it. Thank you, Phil. Okay, Paul, you're up next.
Yeah, mine is the sea.
The
I don't want
sea.
to be on the waters. Yeah, not on the boats, not in the ship. Nope.
Wow. No, I can understand that. That's not really irrational. That's
Yeah.
I'm kind of with you there. All right, Althea, you're up next.
I am in the snake camp. Can't stand them. I have threatened to burn my house down when we found one in the house once. Yeah, my husband's nickname, especially around this time of year, is the Snake Slayer.
Thank you, Althea. Next up is Jeb. Jeffer, oh, there you go.
I don't like spiders.
Fair enough, because I don't either. Thank you. Lakeisha, you're up next.
Well, actually, Jeff, you and I don't like spiders. I despise spiders.
Squish them.
I run from them.
I'd say so far Joe is winning though. The oranges, that was the most off the wall one that I've heard. Christine, you're up next.
I will not walk over a storm grate or the storm drain cover on a sidewalk. Nope, it's gonna fall and I'm going down.
Thank you, Christine. Nikenji, you're up next.
Okay, and please don't laugh at me.
That's gonna happen. Just go ahead and get it out.
I have a really, really big fear of butterflies because they bite. And I have been known to jump behind my grandchildren. I've been known to knock over other little children because there was a butterfly there. No, get away from me, get out of my way. You are collateral damage. Sorry.
Okay. Barbara, you're up next.
I don't know if you all remember the song Bed by Michael Jackson, but I hate rats. And one time I was in college sitting behind the dorm and I pointed out to some friends. I said, look at that cute little puppy. And they said, that's a rat, that's not a puppy. So the thought of a rat just sends chills up my spine.
Thank you, Barbara. Okay, Kwame, you're up next.
I think mine is a thunderstorm and lightning.
Thank you, Kwame. Mike, you're up next.
I'm here. I was kind of.
What's your irrational phobia?
I'm sorry.
What's your irrational phobia? What do you fear the most?
Toilet seats, but we gotta use them though.
Like public ones or any?
All of them. They don't matter.
Okay.
All
Just
of
wanna
them.
make sure I covered it. All right. And last but certainly never least, Nick Bauer.
Yeah, not least. Why did it have to be snakes? That's all I want to say. Seems like everybody's Indiana Jones fans. I have an irrational fear of two things. It's with like going places and if I have to go to the bathroom or even going to bed and I feel like, oh, I might have to go to the bathroom at night. It's like I have to go. before I go somewhere or do something, make sure I'm available to be there. I can go to the bathroom in comfort. Otherwise, I'm like, I don't want to be there. It's just, I get all weird.
Nick, you're officially over 40. I just need to let you know that because that's
Is
everybody.
that what it
over
is?
40.
I'm getting old. Well, I have an irrational fear of getting old now.
Oh, no, don't worry about that. You'll be fine. And that is everyone. Thank you all so much for participating and for staying a little bit later. Charles.